Live from the Ken and Valerie Baker studio at WHYY in Philadelphia, this is Ask Governor Meyer. I'm Shirley Min. This evening is another chance for Delawareans to hear directly from their governor and to ask questions in real time. Our show is produced by WHYY and Delaware Public Media with editorial independence from the governor's office. We alone prepared the questions and topics, and our producers will be screening calls for clarity and relevance only. We welcome the diverse opinions of our audience. So with me in our Philadelphia studio once again is Delaware Governor Matt Meyer. Governor Meyer, thanks so much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Shirley. It's great to be here.
We are also joined by two journalists who will add their questions to the mix. Sarah Mueller is the Delaware politics reporter at WHYY News, and Tom Byrne is Delaware Public Media's news director. Welcome to you both.
Thank you much.
We're going to move through a series of topics this hour, and now is the time for audience members to join the conversation. You can call 888-477-9499, email askgovmeyer@whyy.org, and if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you can leave a comment in the chat. So we are going to start, Governor, with the controversial proposal, 25 years in the making, that would merge 4 school districts into one. Now, I have 2 kids in the Brandywine School District, and I can tell you firsthand that my Facebook feed is blowing up. People are fired up, not really happy about this vote. We have heard from several audience members, including Chelsea in Wilmington, who's against this. So, Sarah Mueller, you're going to get things started for us.
The Wilmington Consortium voted Tuesday to go with the Northern Newcastle model. That means Red Clay, Brandywine, Colonial, and Christina will merge into a single district. Advocates of this option say improving educational outcomes will have a positive impact on workforce development, property values, and public health. But here's Wilmington teacher Michelle Sushi talking about why she's opposed to the one-county district plan.
I don't want Northern Newcastle County because I don't want my kids in the city of Wilmington to get lost in an even bigger pool than they're already lost in.
You've said this is your preferred choice. How do you reassure Michelle and other teachers like her?
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to be here. First of all, I am a Brandywine parent as well. I have 2 children in Brandywine School, 2 different Brandywine School District schools. I went to Brandywine School District schools, and it's accurate that the option that was voted on a 19-2 vote by Reading Consortium members was the proposal that I was pretty open, and I think I sat in this seat a month or 2 ago and told you that it was the one I supported. I think that, first of all, there are very serious problems in educational outcomes for kids across our state. Look, I'm a math teacher, and I tell you, if a student can't solve for X, if they can't even read the problem, there's no way for that student to advance in their educational career. There's very little opportunity they're going to have to build an economy to get a quality job. Over 50% of students in Delaware and in most schools, many more than 50% of students are not proficient in reading or in math. The status quo is not acceptable. The idea that simply moving district lines is going to fix all of these problems is not accurate. I would never say that. My role is to make sure we get resources to the classroom. The current district alignment in Newcastle County, I don't know if there's a human being in Delaware who would design the districts that way. We need a sane alignment of districts. This is the proposal that was voted for. And for those who are looking at their worst fears, are saying, oh no, my kid in Wilmington is now going to have to go across the county to go to school. Oh no, my kid's school, which is a great school, the 2 schools that our kids go to, we think they're really good schools. And it's very easy for someone to come and say, those schools are going to be destroyed by this redistricting. My pledge to you is to take what's working within our schools and use this as an opportunity to enhance that, to enhance opportunity. Let me just close with a quick example. I was watching 60 Minutes a couple weeks ago, and they had a program, they had a segment about a program called iGEM. in a school called the Lambert School in Atlanta, Georgia. This was extraordinary. There were high school kids who had developed a new detection for Lyme disease that apparently is faster and more accurate than anything on the market today. They went into the global iGEM competition in Paris, and in 60 minutes, you were expecting them to win. They didn't win. They finished in second to a Chinese team, but they did really well and really impressive. They said in the segment that there were 15 or 20 schools around the country that had this program. I watched that, and I was watching with Lauren, my wife, and I turned to her. I said, we need to have this in Delaware schools. It's ridiculous. So she said, you're the governor. You figure it out. So I just Googled the names of various people they interviewed. Within an hour, I was in touch with the leader of that program in Georgia. And I said, I want to talk to you. How do we get this program in Delaware? She emailed me the next morning, and she said, not only do you have it in Delaware, but a Delaware school was in Paris in the global competition. A team from the charter school of Wilmington was at that competition. Why isn't that spreading? Why don't we have iGEM programs in schools across Newcastle County and across our state? I think if there's a single district, there will be additional opportunity for kids who are currently in Brandywine School District, in Colonial, in Christine, and Red Clay to have additional opportunities, whether they're thriving or whether they're struggling.
Wilmington students are majority low income and Black and brown children. The Brandywine School District says it's against any consolidation, and some board members believe adding Wilmington students will make the district less diverse. And some in the city see it as, once again, the suburbs rejecting their kids. How will your administration ensure that Newcastle County schools welcome all students throughout the redistricting process?
It is so easy when you have a complex system like our current system of districts in Newcastle County and across our state. It's so easy to look at any change and express our worst fears. I have fears as a parent about what would happen. It's so easy to express our worst fears and say, we never want this to happen. Let's keep the status quo. Even if the school you're going into, even if the school you're sending your kids to, 60% of kids are coming out proficient, I don't think that is acceptable. That means over a third of the kids in our finest schools are not proficient in reading or math. We need to have a top-notch education system. Parents, teachers, those involved, school board members, have my assurance that I'm the governor. I don't have power over everything, and I certainly don't have all the power in terms of your schools and school system. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure those schools that are excelling get additional opportunity through a realignment of districts, if it ends up actually happening, and make sure that your greatest fears do not come to fruition.
Governor, this model, the Newcastle County model, is the more expensive, the most expensive of the models. It's estimated to cost around $20 million to level up salaries and things like that. How do you sell this to a particular constituency? You have to lawmakers.
First of all, it's a 19-2 vote, which means that this. I was asked today, what does this mean for Kent and Sussex County, who similarly have a patchwork of districts? Does this mean you're consolidating there as well? The Reading Consortium and this whole district consolidation and realigning districts in Newcastle County was really a community effort where people starting in the city of Wilmington said the current situation is not sustainable. It doesn't make sense. And so we need to make sure the legislature is ultimately a reflection of people. To be clear, next, it doesn't go to legislature. It goes to
State Board of Education.
State Board of Education. And then the plan will be refined. There are a lot of details to be filled in. I think it's important that people that have criticism be heard, that we understand that parents who simply want the best for their kids, they hear of this, and it creates a tremendous amount of fear. As a parent, I share part of that fear, and we got to understand what the downsides are and what the opportunities are, and make sure we do everything to realize the opportunity. You mentioned cost, and let me just say one thing about cost. The AIR report that was the basis for that cost study was really looking at the short-term costs of transitioning from the current 4-district structure to a 1-district consolidated structure. The it's the most costly because you're going to have to true up staff salaries.
Right.
If you have a salary of a professional in red clay and equivalent professional in Brandywine, if the Brandywine professional's making more, they're not going to end up making less. The red clay professional is going to end up matching. And so I actually don't think that's such a bad thing to say that, wait a second, regardless of what district you're teaching in, regardless of what neighborhood you're teaching in, you're going to get paid an equivalent amount. And I think over time there will be savings of consolidating schools. Right now you have kids in the city of Wilmington, many kids in the city of Wilmington, who are bused to Glasgow High School, often on a bus for over an hour, Christina High School, which is right near Glasgow High School, on a bus for over an hour, Newark High School, and all those schools, I believe, are over one half empty. It's not acceptable. So I think there are opportunities as time goes on for us to realize financial savings and, more importantly, to better educate our kids.
I think we're going to be revisiting this topic in the next Ask Governor Meyer next month. But I want to transition over to the topic of government transparency. This is kind of this ongoing issue in the state of Delaware. Last time you were on the program, you had encouraged a lot of listeners whose questions you couldn't answer directly to email you. Mm-hmm. Now, earlier this evening, our producers heard from Bill in Milton, who says he's been trying to get help with a Department of Labor issue for months. So we have a clip. I want to take a listen to Bill.
I got the reply, an automated reply that says they'll either get back to me or have somebody from the proper agency to get back to me, and nothing. I don't expect a call from Governor Meyer, but I know he has constituent services. Somebody could reach out and hear my story. Like I say, I'm not a political person, but he's turning me into one.
And from listening to Bill, he sounds like someone who has been sort of punted from one non-answer to another. So you can hear some of that frustration in his voice. Can you address constituents who feel that the issues most impacting their lives are slipping through the cracks?
Yeah, I mean, we have a constituent services department. I encourage you to call my office. I will get Bill and Milton's phone number or email address before I leave. I will contact him as soon as I leave here. I get weekly reports from my constituent services team describing the issues that are coming in, issues that are resolved, issues unresolved. I personally review those, and if there are things falling through the cracks, it's good to raise them on this show, and I'm happy to address them.
Wonderful. Hopefully Bill can get some answers here. Lynn in Milton has a healthcare related question. She wants to know what the state is doing for patients sick with Lyme disease and other insect-borne infections. She says, quote, testing is not reliable and many patients have to go out of state and pay out of pocket for care.
Yeah. Particularly in Milton, in the southern part of the state, the current healthcare situation is not acceptable. Mm-hmm. We deserve, every Delawarean deserves the highest quality, 2025 technological, affordable, accessible care. It was something I campaigned on last year. It's something I talked about in my inauguration address. About a month ago, we announced a $1 billion healthcare transformation plan that particularly focused on areas like Milton to make sure the shortage of medical practitioners, the unaffordability of care, and particularly the long wait times in emergency rooms and things like that are addressed, the lack of technology in care. So how do we make sure that Liz, I think it is, Lynn in Milton can, if there's no doctor available in her area, she can go on a telehealth app and have opportunities. Right now there are legal barriers to it. We're working on that plan. I know if you have Lyme disease today and want to see something today, we're not going to address it tomorrow, but we were working hard on it. Part of that plan is developing the first medical school in state history, one of 4 states in America without a medical school. When you have the shortages of medical practitioners, including nurses, that you see across our state's physician assistants, we need a medical school and enhanced medical training facilities across our state, and we're working on that as well.
Okay. And then once that's sort of leveled up, the testing will come, the testing for,
Well, there's some immediate things we're doing, and you're going to see in this next legislative session. It's too hard if you're a physician to come to Delaware. The licensing process can take years. We're looking at how do we streamline that. So anyone who wants to come into Delaware, including physicians who want to come, and it might not be in vogue to say this, but physicians who want to come from outside the country have clean, easy, simple, clear ways to come and start practicing. It's not just physicians. As I said, it's also nurses, it's med techs, it's physician assistants. There are huge shortages in those workforces across our state, and we're working hard with healthcare institutions to address them.
Okay, on the other side of the break, we're going to get to the recent audit on the Port of Wilmington and hear more from our audience. We invite you to join the conversation at home. Do you have a question for Governor Meyer? Call 888-477-9499. Email askgovmeyer@whyy.org. Or if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please leave a comment in the chat. We'll be right back with more Ask Governor Meyer. You're listening to Ask Governor Meyer on WHYY and Delaware Public Media. I'm Shirley Min. Governor Matt Meyer is taking questions from our two reporters, WHYY's Sarah Mueller and Delaware Public Media's Tom Byrne, and from you, our audience. To add your voice to the conversation, call 888-477-9499. Email askgovmeyer@whyy.org, or if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, go ahead and leave that comment. We are going to go to a caller now. Martin in Newcastle is on the line. Martin, what's your question?
My question to Governor Meyer is, first of all, I'd like to thank Governor Meyer for putting me on the Nuclear Energy Feasibility Task Force. And Governor Meyer, with the recent PJM power grid auction hitting new record highs, would you agree that Delaware needs to build new nuclear power so that we can have a reliable electric generation in state? Delaware currently imports 60% of its electricity, and to meet its 2050 goals for net zero emission, would you agree with me, Governor, that we need to invest in nuclear power? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. I appreciate your service, not just on the Nuclear Commission, but for years. He's someone who's actually built things, and it's great to have him on the task force. Delaware generates less energy than nearly every state in America. That's not acceptable in this day and age when there's such a shortage of energy. People are seeing it on their power bills, not just in Delaware, across the region, particularly across PJM. As Martin mentioned, I think it was today with the PJM auction, we're looking at another new level of cost for purchasing power. There's the easiest solution to address. So the problem is that new generation takes a long time to develop. Right? Almost any source you come up with takes a long time. You often need federal permits, state permits, and local government land use. The easiest way to address this is for the Trump administration to allow the U.S. wind project to go forward. That would provide, I believe it's more than 2 Salem nuclear generators worth of power to our region. It would have a dramatic impact on pricing of power for Delawareans. Realistically, not sure that will happen. I'm very interested in nuclear. I was very supportive of the task force. Biggest problem is it takes a long time. There are small modular nuclear reactors now that they say work faster. The challenge with that is really not many of them have been done in the U.S. So we're working. I'm very supportive of the task force. I'm somewhat agnostic. I know there are people who are like, it's got to be all wind and solar. There are other people who are, it all has to be coal, fossil fuels, gas. I'm agnostic. We need power, and we're eager to get it, move forward. I'd like to see it done in a zero emissions way, and I'm a fan of nuclear.
Martin, thank you so much for that question. Here's another listener question. T in Wilmington writes, I'm an adjudicated youth at a DSCYF facility. Before I was adjudicated, I applied to many local jobs but was unable to find employment. What are you doing to make employment more accessible to youth, especially those who may have had legal trouble in their past?
Yeah. T, thank you for the question. I was just at a graduation last week for a program called Project New Start, which takes adjudicated youth from when they are incarcerated, often level 5, our highest level of incarceration, starts working with them and preparing them for, for having a successful reentry and getting a true second chance. I've talked to Project New Start about expanding their relationship with our Department of Corrections. The reality today in Delaware is that the public is safer than it has been in a long, long time based on available and long-used crime data. The recidivism rate, the number of individuals who are leaving our prison system and committing crimes is lower than it's been in a long time. And our prison population is lower. The actual census, the total number of people incarcerated, is lower than it's been in a long time. You've probably seen news about the Plummer Center, that we have facilities that 10 years ago had 260 people in it, that today have 40 or 50 people in it. It's in terms of budgeting, it creates a problem, right? You can imagine, but it's a huge opportunity. We got to make sure, especially with the labor shortages in the market, nearly every employer I talk to is looking for labor. We need to make sure that individuals like T have equal opportunity to get into these programs, that we're actively seeking them out, both in government and programs like Project New Start, to make sure they're trained to participate, not just in menial labor, but in the jobs truly of tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean maybe more partnerships where there are already partnerships in the works?
Our Department of Corrections is doing extraordinary work. Much of the furniture that I have actually was produced through DCI, the Delaware Correctional Industries. There are companies that are in our prison system, unlike corrections was just 10 or 20 years ago. And so we got to make sure, if there are people falling through the cracks like T, we got to make sure, T, feel free to reach out to my office. We'll connect you to a program that can help.
Okay, Governor Meyer, when you last joined the program, we discussed how Delaware is addressing the issue of homelessness. Dover City Council plans to vote next month on an ordinance that would amend city traffic rules to target panhandlers on busy streets, instituting fines on those individuals, plus those who would stop to give to them. Tom Byrne, your question.
So, Governor, past efforts like this have faced First Amendment legal challenges. In addition, Spotlight Delaware is reporting that Delaware's Department of Justice is working on changes to state loitering and solicitation laws, including a prohibition on individuals blocking the flow of traffic. So do you support ordinances like this one introduced in Dover? And what do you think about the state perhaps taking the lead on creating one standard to handle these issues?
Well, yesterday I was at the Hope Center at their 5th anniversary. Nearly 7,000 Delawareans have spent at least one night at the Hope Center. I think about 750 families have gone through the Hope Center program, which is a 60, 90-day, sometimes 120-day program, taking individuals and families who are most vulnerable, homeless, and giving them the dignity of a quality place to live, quality food, so they don't have to worry about things like that, giving intensive case management. So if there's substance use, mental health, domestic violence issues, if there are veterinary problems, if there's a pet, that's all handled in a single facility. I believe in comprehensive solutions to the problems of homelessness and individuals who don't have a place to live. Those are the kinds of things we support. I mentioned earlier our $1 billion healthcare transformation plan. It's interesting because a lot of this is a healthcare problem as well. For primary care, a number of these panhandlers and homeless individuals end up in the emergency room, and multiple times, even in a week, are going to the emergency room. I think, my wife's an emergency room physician. I hear about it almost every day. So what we've proposed is Hope Center-like facilities in Sussex as well as Kent County. So we are interested not just in getting involved or passing judgment on individuals who want their communities to be safe. They want their streets of their cities to look beautiful, and they want people to come and say, hey, this is a place I want to be. This is a place I want to travel to. This is a place I want to have lunch. I understand that, but also give people the freedom and opportunity that everyone deserves in Delaware in 2025.
But on this specific issue, is it better to have the state lead and set up these kind of solicitation and laws as opposed to individual municipalities like Dover and having a patchwork?
I think we have had conversations with the Attorney General about what freedoms are acceptable and what are not, what is protected by the First Amendment. Areas that similar issues have arisen in Wilmington, for example, and probably in other municipalities in the state, and giving clear guidance about this is what you can do and have discretion to do, and this is something that's probably a constitutional problem.
Okay.
We have another caller on the line, Danielle in Laurel. Danielle, thanks for calling Ask Governor Meyer. What's your question?
So my question is, my son was murdered 10/29/2023 in Laurel, Delaware. And every year since, I've held a walk in honor of him and other parents who have lost their kids to gun violence. And this year, I was not supported by the Laurel Police Department whatsoever. I feel like the community does not support people when in this area, when something tragic like this happens. It could have been prevented and it was not. And I just don't know how to move past it when I'm not being supported and I'm actually trying to give awareness to our area and try to help other people.
Thank you, Danielle. I believe you're Kylie's mother. Is that right?
Yes, sir, yes. And I met you, so yeah.
Yeah, and one of the first things I did after I was sworn in is I visited Laurel. Laurel is a place that when I was growing up in Delaware, never had the kind of violence that they're seeing now. No parent, I'm a parent, no parent in America should have to go through what Danielle has had to go through. So first of all, I just salute your courage and strength for getting out of bed, for picking up the phone and calling us tonight. We set up, as I think you may know, an Office of Gun Violence in our Department of Safety and Homeland Security. And I'm going to make sure we reach out to you. I'm going to make sure that we get the support you need for the march, and make sure we do what we can. You've already been a leading voice, making sure that Laurel is safer than it has ever been before. And I just want you to know you have my pledge of support in making sure we get kids what they need, whether it's after school activities or other police engagements to keep Laurel safe.
Danielle, how was the Laurel Police Department not being supportive? In what way specifically?
So basically, to keep it short, I don't want to hold anyone up. Basically, the year before, the first year I did it, I took care of all of I had to pay for the park, and I also paid for the police to be present and, in the walk. Everything went smooth the first year. The second year, they told me that I would need 8 police officers, a minimum, and that would cost me starting $1,500. Now, I do Kylie's Mom Steps Against Gun Violence, but I am not a nonprofit. I do everything out of my own pocket. So I do include other mothers, that have, I'm just a voice for them. So when the police department basically just stated, you will have to walk on the sidewalk, the only one that stood by me was the mayor. We have a new mayor, so of course he did stand by me. But we ended up starting on the sidewalk, but we had a friend ride behind us so we could still stand tall, walk the streets, and we did stop at the Little Creek Apartments, and I made a speech there because West 7th Street, between all the apartment complexes there and the street that my son was murdered on, that street has been the worst street in 2022, in 2023, and years before that and after. Things like this can be prevented if it is high crime, but it's nothing being prevented. And I don't understand that. So I was not supported. They never reach out to me. They don't ask me how I'm doing. They do none of that.
Danielle, thank you.
That's how I feel not supported. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for calling in.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
So I don't know how we move forward on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, and the pain of someone like Danielle, right? For again, to just say the courage for her to call, and she's looking out for all of us and saying, "Hey, this happened to me. We got to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else." And I just want to know if she has an ally in my office. I can't imagine the struggles that she goes through and the frustrations, and we want to make sure we partner. She has information and awareness and a perspective that few have in understanding how we can get to the root causes of some of this stuff.
Okay, we're going to shift gears here. We have to move on to a recent audit of the Port of Wilmington, a critical part of the state's economy. Sarah Mueller, you have the details there.
The recent audit of the Port of Wilmington found that the Diamond State Port Corporation wrongly held secret meetings, painted a rosier picture of the port's true economic condition, lacked proper oversight, and used outdated jobs data for the Edgemoor Port Expansion Project. Auditor Lydia York began the audit after then Governor John Carney transferred $200 million in taxpayer funds to the board for the Edgemoor project, the largest to date infusion of state money. Here is State Auditor Lydia York.
I firmly believe that the business of our state should be carried out under the watchful eye of its residents. Delawareans deserve to know more, not less, about where their tax dollars are going and how they are being used.
Now, your office at the time criticized the $200 million transfer, which happened shortly before you took office, for lacking transparency and accountability. But now your administration is attacking the report as inaccurate and incomplete. Did the former chair of the board wrongly hold secret meetings, mislead the public, mismanage the port?
Yeah, I'll let Delawareans read the report and hear the criticism of it and judge for themselves. We're looking forward, not back. The Port of Wilmington is one of the most important assets in our state. It is a global port that has existed in the city of Wilmington for decades and decades, provided meaningful career opportunities for over 1,000 Delaware families for generations. There is an opportunity and a risk. The risk, if we don't build a new port, this proposed port at Edgemoor, the risk is that the existing port is not up to modern standards. We have a risk of losing significant business over time. The Edgemoor Port presents a tremendous opportunity. Now, the Edgemoor Port was talked about throughout my predecessor's time, through Governor Carney's time, through his 8 years. There were numerous attempts. There was a partner, Gulf Tainer, who was attempting to build it. That didn't come to fruition. We came in January. As you mentioned, days before we came in, nearly $200 million was transferred out of the state coffers to the port. Some funny things went on in terms of trying to put port people on the board, things that we thought was taking public control away. We asked the auditor to look at these issues. Nearly every issue in this audit addresses issues that occurred before we came in. They are helpful in making sure that we run a port that is transparent. This is a public asset. I don't own the port. Charny Patibanda Sanchez, who's our Secretary of State, the current chair of the Port Corporation, she doesn't own the port. The people own that port, and we need to be responsive to them.
Okay. Sorry, just getting my ducks in a row here. We are going to take a short break right now. We've been speaking with Delaware Governor Matt Meyer, and here is how you can ask your questions briefly. Just want to run these over again. You can call 888-477-9499. Email askgovmeyer@whyy.org, or if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please feel free to leave your comment in the chat. This is Ask Governor Meyer. We will be right back. You're listening to Ask Governor Meyer on WHYY and Delaware Public Media. I'm Shirley Min, and Delaware Governor Matt Meyer is with us in our Philadelphia studio to answer your questions. So send them to askgovmeyer@whyy.org or call 888-477-9499. We have reporters Sarah Mueller and Tom Byrne with us. And if you're just tuning in, we've covered education, the Port of Wilmington, and more. So we are going to go right to a caller to kick off this next segment rather. Cheyenne in Wilmington, what's your question?
Hi, just want to know, do you support rent stabilization? That is a law that would limit how high the rent can get raised each year, not to be mistaken for rent control, which basically caps the rent at a certain amount. This would still allow for landlords to be able to increase the rent each year. It would just put a limit on how high. And if there were a bill or anything that were to come forward, would you support implementing that statewide?
Great question, Cheyenne.
Yeah, thank you, Cheyenne. And I know Cheyenne's been working hard for rent stabilization, particularly in the city of Wilmington. I think local jurisdictions should make their own decision with their housing markets. Delaware's not that big, but housing markets in Fenwick Island and Bethany Beach and Seaford are very different from each other, let alone from the city of Wilmington and city of Dover. What we are focused on in Delaware, and particularly through our Delaware State Housing Authority, is an imbalance right now that the number of people and families who need affordable homes, there simply aren't enough homes out there. So seeing how do we manage land use? How do we make sure there's still preservation, that we're sustainably growing communities, that we're growing communities with smart growth principles across our state, and doing so by constructing and taking vacant homes, turning them into livable homes, and where we can, making sure there are opportunities to build affordable and workforce homes.
Okay, so may not work necessarily statewide, but definitely a city issue. Okay, we're going to move to the budget. The latest state revenue estimate was released this week. Tom?
Governor, you'll use this latest DFAC estimate to craft your 2027 budget proposal. It's also the first one since the General Assembly passed a bill to blunt a predicted $400 million shortfall created by the One Big Beautiful Bill Act's changes to tax code. Essentially, the bill decouple portions of Delaware tax code from federal code, and it's predicted to recapture about $328 million through FY28. Opponents of the bill, though, said it would hurt Delaware's business-friendly reputation. Here's Republican State Senator Brian Pettyjohn.
We don't want to send a signal out there that Delaware might value our state budget priorities over the investments that they're trying to make here in our state.
How do you respond to that perspective?
Yeah, House Resolution 1 on the federal level, President Trump and Republican proposal ended up taking away over $300 million of revenue over the next couple of years from the state of Delaware. The federal government can reduce tax rates and not worry that much about revenue loss because they literally can print money. And what the Republican Congress did this year has caused our national deficit to increase by over $2 trillion this year alone. States can't do that. Senator Pettyjohn and I, we got to figure out how to balance our budget every year. And so unlike the federal government, when we have a reduction in revenue, we either have to find a way to get that revenue back or we need to cut expenses somewhere. This is revenue, to be clear, right? If it's revenue for the state, well, where's it coming from? Somebody's paying it. And if the revenue is decreasing, somebody's getting a tax reduction. This over $300 million of tax reduction is nearly entirely out-of-state companies, meaning out-of-state shareholders, who pay a small fraction of the tax they pay across the country to Delaware. That doesn't sound like much money, but when there are a lot of companies doing it all across the country, it adds up to over $300 million. We struggled to find a single Delaware company that would be negatively impacted in any substantive way, in any sizable, meaningful way by our decoupling. So individuals like Senator Pettyjohn and people are criticizing, saying it's hurting our business reputation. It's hurting our business reputation only because people like Senator Pettyjohn are saying this is going to hurt our business reputation. There are incredible business opportunities and tax assistance for small business owners. If you want to do R&D, there's an unlimited research and development tax credit in Delaware. I think we're the only refundable tax credit. I think we're the only state in the country with that. One of the issues of decoupling was the R&D tax. They're saying, oh, this is business unfriendly. We're not going to be able to do it. So it gets very complicated into the details of tax law. We're very confident. We very quickly got supermajorities in the House and Senate to support our proposal. The alternative was making pretty draconian and massive cuts to schools and hospitals and other roads and other assistance, and we chose this was the best option. We're not going to let a Republican Congress in Washington that doesn't seem to be worried about balancing a budget bring our budget out of balance. So we brought it back, and if there are specific issues where we should not have decoupled, I'm open to looking at them and making sure Delawareans are treated fairly.
Governor, we have a YouTube comment from a listener who says, so many of us have heard that a few people are trying to overturn the Death with Dignity bill. We want to make sure that doesn't happen. So, Governor, can you address this concern?
Yeah, I don't like to comment on ongoing litigation for fear that I will say something that ends up in the litigation. But suffice it to say that I am in agreement with the questioner. Delaware is a place of freedom. This is a time when really one thing that's going on in America is there's attempts to really restrict various freedoms. And I think Delaware should be a place of freedom, and that it includes individuals having the choice of when with appropriate safeguards they can end their life. We have a lot of legal backing for our position. We're confident about the court case, but we're making sure we're well resourced to defend the law. It's the right thing to do. And I should add that Governor Hochul in New York today or yesterday signed a very similar bill. They say imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So congratulations and thank you to many of the advocates in Delaware like Representative Baumbach, who made sure that bill came forward. It's not just Delawareans who you benefited for generations to come, but it's also New Yorkers.
Okay, before we move to a rapid fire round of questions, immigration in this country is top of mind subject for a lot of people. I'm going to summarize a question we received from Julie in Bethany Beach. Avelo Airlines, which is Delaware's only commercial carrier, has a contract with the Department of Homeland Security to carry out deportation flights, which they are doing in other states. There have been months of protests of the airline since the announcement was made this year, and newly filed legislation would remove a jet fuel tax exemption from commercial airlines that transport ICE detainees who have been denied due process. So, Governor, can you address those opposed to working with companies doing business with the Department of Homeland Security, specifically immigration enforcement?
Shortly after news came out that Avelo was involved in deportation flights, I reached out to Avelo. I confirmed that the story was true and the information was true. And I made very clear to the public that I, who was quite frankly pretty eager to particularly take that Puerto Rican flight on Avelo, that my wife and I decided we were not going to take Avelo. I think it's important that Delawareans and people everywhere have the freedom to choose which companies they want to work with and which companies they don't want to work with. I also think, to something the questioner referenced, I think it's important that we make sure that if someone's involved in deportations without due process, they don't get any relief or assistance from Delaware taxpayers. And so we're working to make that a reality. There were some legacy programs that we let sort of finish their course. We didn't want to be breach of any contract or anything like that. We let them, but we continue to, we just refuse to renew, I believe, a fuel tax credit. And we'll make sure that if there is assistance given from state coffers, we look at it and make sure it's not being used inappropriately.
Okay, we're going to move to the rapid fire question round. These are audience submitted questions. Governor, we're going to ask that you try to answer these in about 30 seconds. So the first question is from Marilyn in Wilmington. There will certainly be some type of development eventually at the Concord Mall. Will the state consider getting involved in promoting affordably priced owner-occupied duplexes to be built on that well-suited location?
Absolutely. I grew up at the Concord Mall. It's near and dear to my heart. I don't want to get in trouble with my wife. Or with the management of the Concord Mall. My first kiss was like under a tree back in the by Concord Mall. But it's time for redevelopment. We'll see. It's on the market. There's a property owner who owns it. But I think, workforce housing that's affordable to Delawareans, it seems to me it's a great location for it.
Okay, our second question comes from Peggy Ann. Can the state pursue discounted private transportation or rideshare contracts for persons with disabilities in Delaware? This has existed in New Jersey with a certain number of free miles with Uber and Lyft.
So if they're through DART, there is assistance like this. I don't know if the question is asking specifically, can we work with Uber and Lyft to do that? I'm certainly open to it. In my prior job as county executive, I talked about the Hope Center earlier, and as many listeners probably know, the biggest criticism of the Hope Center when we established it is how are people going to get there, and how are they going to go to work and stuff like that. We developed a partnership with Uber similar to what the questioner is asking, and I'm certainly open to doing that.
What would be her first step? If she's trying to, if you're open to it, then what's the first step in that process?
Send me an email, matthew.meyer@delaware.gov, matthew.meyer@delaware.gov, and we can discuss it. I'm only going to do it if there are gaps if there are individuals who should be served by our DART bus program who are not getting served and not affordably getting served, we'll address it.
Okay, Herb in Newcastle writes, I have overdue medical debt. How is the $500,000 working? I need help.
Yeah, thank you, Herb. We started a program to alleviate medical debt. The goal was to address medical debt of about 18,000 Delawareans, I think is what we talked about when we proposed it to the legislature earlier this year. To date, we have provided relief to 18,000 Delawareans. We have we have significant, over half the money remains. So we're going to continue doing work on that. We're looking at debt levels that are the highest.
Right.
Assistance is being given to anyone who makes up to 400% of the poverty line. 80% of those, over 80% of those we've assisted so far make $50,000 or less a year. So there's a process and a procedure. Hopefully, Herb, your number comes up and we'll be able to assist you.
Okay. This is our last episode of 2025. Next year marks the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding, and there's some lingering controversy over the statue of Delaware founding father Caesar Rodney. Sarah Mueller, your question.
The statue was taken down in 2020 from Rodney Square in Wilmington amid protests about monuments of Confederate leaders and historical figures who were slaveholders. His statue may be featured next year in Washington, D.C., or be displayed somewhere else in the state. The Caesar Rodney Institute says Rodney took anti-slavery votes as an elected official that mitigate his use of slave labor. But some Delawareans say that anyone who owned enslaved people should not be put on a pedestal. Here's Wilmington City Council member Shanae Darby.
Never will be in support of it. Slavery did not happen a long time ago. It's only a few generations ago, and we still feel the impacts of it.
Do you support the Caesar Rodney statue being displayed in D.C. or elsewhere in the state?
I think that if the statue is displayed anywhere, and I'm not totally against it being displayed in Delaware, it must include a very accurate description of the good, the bad, and the ugly of Caesar Rodney's life. The reality is, without Caesar Rodney, there might not be a Delaware, and there may not be a United States. He was critical, casting really important votes to the founding of this country. There's also some inaccuracies on that statue. He's on a horse, right? My understanding is there is at least one letter from that time that indicates he actually was not riding on a horse. He was very sick at the time he was going up to Philadelphia, and apparently was in a carriage, not riding a horse, which I think is kind of an important historical fact if we're going to display this statue as a historic monument. So I'm not against telling our history. I think it needs to be told accurately.
Okay, Joanne from Lincoln wrote in to ask, Governor, what issues of concern do you feel you have in common with Republicans in our state? I think there's a misconception that a Democratic governor can't have anything in common with conservatives.
You know, Governor Stitt of Oklahoma, which is just about the reddest of red states in our country, and I did a TED Talk about a month ago. I encourage you, I think Joanne is your name, I encourage you to Google it and watch the TED Talk. I want taxes to be low. I want government to be efficient. I want private sector to thrive. I want people to have opportunity. I also believe strongly in the diversity of communities. I believe in the equitable governance. I believe in inclusivity. And I also believe that immigrants coming to our country from wherever they come from shouldn't be judged on the country they come from, the color of their skin, their culture, their language. I think they should be given an equal opportunity. I'll let you judge for yourself what of what I said is Democrat or Republican, but regardless of how you classify it, that's how I'm going to govern our state.
And so do you feel like there are some commonalities? I think Delaware is unique in that because we're so small, there are a lot of commonalities, particularly with state lawmakers.
Absolutely. I mean, they're
may be very specific to Delaware.
I mean, the House Republican leadership called me in a few months ago to discuss nuclear power. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of common ground there on creating new power generation sources. But more important than that, for me, is 15 years ago, I was a diplomat in Iraq. I spent a year on a military base in Iraq. On that base, there were no Democrats and there were no Republicans. There were 10,000 American soldiers serving. We need to tap into that sense of unity, not listen, quite frankly, to the divisive language coming out of the White House. In Delaware, we can be better than this. We can work together. The education of our children and our economic future depends on it.
Okay, you hear the music. We're going to have to leave it there. It's been a lively discussion. Thank you to all of the audience members who participated. Governor Matt Meyer of Delaware, thank you for joining us. Thank you also to Delaware Public Media's Tom Byrne and WHYY News reporter Sarah Mueller. Ask Governor Meyer is produced by Paige Murray Bessler and Hazel May Bryan. Tina Calicay and Diana Martinez are our technical engineers. Thank you to Delaware Public Media's Thomas Terry and Tom Interante. Kevin McCory is our executive producer. WHYY's news director is Mark Eichman. Joan Isabella is our audio general manager. And special thanks to the communications team at the Office of the Governor. I'm Shirley Min. Thank you so much for joining us. The next episode of Ask Governor Meyer happens live on January 29th, same time, same place. Join us from 8 to 9 p.m. on WHYY FM, Delaware Public Media, and streaming online on WHYY.org and on WHYY's YouTube channel and Facebook. The Middle with Jeremy Hobson is coming up next, right here on WHYY.